Welcome to the Human Conversation podcast with Jules White, the real dragon slayer, author and entrepreneur sales coach. Tune in weekly for human conversation about business and sales. Enjoy business expert interviews, educational episodes, and virtual cuppers with entrepreneur business owners. So grab yourself a cuppa and enjoy. Here is your host, Jules White.
So welcome everybody to the Human Conversation. And my guest today is super special because this lady has been with me for many years, I realised this morning. I'll tell you more. And she is my coach, and I'll tell everybody she's my coach because when I need her, she's my go-to. I don't have any other coaches. This is her. She's the wonderful Helen Packham. Welcome, Helen.
Hi, it's so great to be back.
I know. I'm so excited about what we're going to talk about today. But I just want to tell the listeners that I have had you on my podcast before. And I was just telling Helen before we started recording, it was in 2018 and now we're in 2024. It's really weird because 2018 doesn't feel like it should be that long ago, but it is 6 years ago, Helen.
Oh, don't.
I can't even remember what we looked like. It was like amazing. And we talked about predominantly your conference that you ran, which was called EL Live. And so if you want to know anything about that amazing event that Helen put on, and we had such a great time, it was on episode 12. So we're now about to make the amazing episode 100, because that is where we're putting this out. 100 episodes, Helen. So Brilliant. You're a very special guest. And I wanted that to be the 100th episode that I did was with you, because you have come on such a long part of my journey with me. So let's start on the back of that conference that you did, which had a lot of amazing speakers that day. Let's start there, because for me personally, it was the start of my real speaking journey, because I'd spoken a long time ago after Dragon's Den, but that was just a bit like, oh, you were on Dragon's Den, come and speak at our event. Yeah, okay. It was one of them. Blag City, Helen. Blag City. But on the back of your event in the July of 2018, I met Toby Moore, who curates the TEDx Brighton. And in turn, in October, I was asked very last minute, I was given 7 days to do my TEDx talk, because I was literally a reserve in essence that I didn't realize I was going to be. And you, Helen, got how long for your TEDx?
24 hours.
Let's just slightly dig into that, because when I was told 7 days, I stood and thought, okay, I said yes, because that's what we always say. But then I thought, how am I going to even do this? How will I do it? I've said yes, but how will I do it? 24 hours, Helen. Tell us what that meant and how you actually stood on that stage and delivered an amazing TEDx talk.
Well, in some ways, I think it was probably good that it was like that, because I had spent this was such a pivotal moment for me, and I had to say yes and figure it out later. Well, not really later, figure it out imminently, because I hadn't stood up in front of a room full of people in a long time before that moment. I'd run away from that career. And in that 24 hours, I was able to very quickly draw on that career to pull out a structure of a talk, some stories, and a sort of semblance of a message that I had used in my training and leadership development career. And it was like a muscle memory, I guess, of just pulling that out and not writing anything down apart from a few images and words, and setting a timer and just saying it over and over again as many times as I could before I had to do it. And I think in some ways that was a good thing. Of course, I look back on it now, and it was the first moment I'd stood up in front of a room full of people in a long time. Of course, I was absolutely petrified, and I did stumble, and of course, I do it very differently now, but I'm proud of that moment because it was so pivotal and so many things have happened since. That people then said to me when they found out you had 24 hours notice, how the hell did you do that then? And then I was able to help other people with that type of thing. And I've done that ever since.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think this is a great point, isn't it? Because obviously I had 7 days, much longer than you had, but I went through exactly the same emotions. It was like I'd said yes, but actually, how do I do this now? And literally, I went back to, I have to tell my story. I just, that's all I pulled on really, because I thought, I know that story. I don't have to script it in any way. I haven't got to really do any research. I know that sounds really terrible,
No,
but
no.
with such short notice, it's like you've got to get up and do something. And you've also got to make a difference to the audience, because of course that's the key bit, isn't it? It's not just
Absolutely.
standing and telling your story. It's like I have to leave them with something. And believe it or not, my son Sam, who obviously you've met and you
Yeah.
know, who's now 19,
Ooh.
Helen, what was he then? 9 minus 6, 13. He was about 13, wasn't he, in 2018?
Wow.
So he was the one who said, well, here's what you can leave the audience with. And it was magic. So you're right. It's just often it's drawing on stuff we actually already know, but just putting it into this format that gives the audience something.
That's exactly it.
That's the ultimate, isn't it? That the
That's
audience
it.
actually walk away with something.
It's true, because I think, basing a talk on personal story is brilliant, of course. It's what are you leaving them with as a result of sharing that journey, rather than just being the journey itself you're sharing.
Yeah, definitely. So we have obviously shared that TEDx experience in a very short notice type of way, which was great fun. And I'm a bit like you. I'm actually really glad I didn't have loads of notice, because I think it would have been far worse.
Yeah.
And TEDx is a really special, I think TEDx Brighton is a really special TEDx, because it's in the beautiful Brighton Dome, and there's 1,600 odd people in that audience, and the audience is also special. They're super encouraging, aren't they? So just tell us a little bit about how you felt after after you'd done that talk.
Well, in very big contrast to how I felt just before, because I had sat in the audience all day watching the other amazing talks, and I was second to last up. But how I'd visualized it all those months before about how I wanted to feel, and how I actually felt was exactly how I'd visualized it. There was the warm lights, there was the warmth of the audience cheering and clapping. It was such a feeling of achievement, because I'd been so scared on the journey up until then, that I just proved to myself that I was able to do something like that. And then we all went to the pub afterwards, just around the corner, and so many people were coming up to me and saying, I loved it, I could really relate to it, thank you so much for sharing that. And I guess, even as much as we say that we must be validated from within, it was a really lovely bit of validation. That really massively boosted my confidence when I needed it.
Amazing, Diane, amazing. And I totally resonate with that. Just somebody coming up to you, or even afterwards writing to you, a stranger, and saying it made a difference, and I went and did this,
Yes, that's what it's all about, right?
That's so special, isn't it? That's why I love speaking. So coming on from that, you created your own event, which had the speakers in, which was EL Live, because that was the year after, I think. Was it 2017 you did your TEDx talk, Helen?
Yeah.
And then what was the year when you then became a TEDx curator?
So I did 2 live conferences of EL Live. And then I had a few life stuff happen, a few bits of life stuff
As
happen,
we do.
Which did mean that I kind of shrunk back from the world a little bit for a period of time. And then, of course, the pandemic hit. But in that time, I was approached by someone who had seen some of my work, had seen my TEDx talk, and was interested in inviting me to have a discussion for a new event that they were just obtaining the license for in Birmingham. And so I had a meeting, and it was a fantastic group of people. And originally they were actually wanting to do a Muslim only focused TEDx event, but that doesn't actually fall in line with licenses or guidelines. And so we had to resubmit the idea for the event. And I was fully involved in that and really excited to be part of that process, shaping the theme and putting forward why it would benefit that particular area of Birmingham. It was a very multicultural area of Birmingham. There's a lot of Muslim representation within that community. And so it was providing a platform and a voice for people within that community. And I was in my element from start to finish. We won the license, and then it was all full steam ahead in actually putting this on. And because of COVID, it got cancelled twice because of we wanted to do it live. We didn't want to do it virtually. And so it was cancelled twice, and then it actually happened. And the whole process of being part of that from the beginning and working with a team of volunteer run people, or everybody had their role. Mine was curator and speaker coach. And so I was responsible for putting out the process and getting all the applications in and working through them and interviewing the people and then deciding on the final lineup and then coaching them to actually deliver their talks. And then being there on the day, I was in the wings, I was supporting them in the wings before they were going on. I was giving them pep talks and coaching them last minute. And, they're human beings like all of us and experience the nerves like I did, and I'm sure you did. And I really enjoyed being there for them in that moment.
Yeah. And
then to watch from the wings or on the back screens in the green room as they actually delivered their talks, I was a mess by the end of the day. So emotional, having been on that journey with them all. Was hands down the most rewarding thing I've ever done.
That's so incredible. And you must have been so proud of them as well, Helen, just actually seeing them complete that.
Yeah, in a non-patronizing way, do you know what I mean?
Yes,
They're very proud, because some of the people that were speaking, Sarah Mandami was profoundly deaf, and she's a very young girl. She's a teenager, and she gave the most incredible talk as a profoundly deaf young woman. And she's just one of the many on that lineup that I was supporting. Very diverse group of people with diverse ideas and different ways of expressing their ideas. And so it was an honor to be part of that.
Yeah, amazing. And I suspect that it was an honor for them to have worked with you, and I mean that very much from a personal perspective, because you are very special. You have a gift of being able to coach people in a really great way. If I could bottle that, then I think we'd all be quite rich, Helen. It's great. And that's why I come back to you again and again, because you get me, and I think there's this whole relationship you create with a coach. So speaking of coaching, because obviously we've talked about TEDx, and I love that we have, but speaking about coaching, what are you up to these days in terms of Helen's business?
Yeah. So whilst I was doing that work with TEDx Moseley, there's a definite, if you're doing that, then you wouldn't be working as a TEDx coach. And so I put that on the back burner whilst I was working in that environment to honor that. But I was still doing my corporate work, which is focused around helping people communicate more effectively in a corporate environment. It looks a little bit different than public speaking, but it uses the same principles of, influence, negotiation, persuasion, conflict management, resolution, storytelling, enhancing presentations, that type of thing. So I was doing that the way through that. And then when I came out of the other side of working within the TEDx team, I went back to really focusing on my speaker coaching. Had an amazing amount of experience there, but also helping people to deliver keynotes for industry events, or creating a signature talk where they could monetize that talk, or they could generate leads from that talk, as well as helping people to deliver TEDx talks at various different events around the country. And I really loved that work. And so it was great to sort of be able to step back into that after. And I'm still doing that now, and I really, really love that work, because everybody is so different.
Yeah.
They've got such a different set of unique skills and experience, stories to tell. and messages to deliver, that there is not one single person I've worked with where it's been the same. And I love the process of helping them get all their ideas out and articulate them in a way that makes a big impact, whether that's on the TEDx stage or a corporate stage or an industry stage. I love the process of helping them pull it all out and then deliver it with confidence, to get the results that they want. So that's what I've been doing since then.
Brilliant stuff.
Yeah.
And this whole speaking thing is quite interesting, because sometimes when we say speaking, people think they've got to get on a stage in front of like hundreds of people, and that's what speaking's all about. But you've just said there, it's actually about communication, isn't it? And being able to bring out those stories. That's why you're great at what you do, because we've all got the stories, but sometimes we'll say, we said this on our last podcast, because I was listening to it this morning, people will say to you, I don't have any stories. I don't have a story, you know, and we hear it all the time, don't we? Well, of course they do. Everybody does. It's their life experience, their journeys. And you're able to then take those and make something that's really special out of it, in terms of what it gives, again, what it gives the audience, what it gives back.
It's interesting because a lot of times people come to me with the goal of delivering a keynote talk or a TEDx talk, but actually what we often find is that there is some foundational stuff to do beforehand to build confidence, and mostly that's around, you know, really understanding what the core story of your business is first, you know, getting really clear on the messages that you want to deliver based on your expertise and experience, creating some kind of expert method around what you do to make it unique, and then creating a talk out of it. You know, I do work with a lot of people that they hit a stumbling block because they think, I want to be a speaker. And then they get to it and they're like, you know, I don't know what to talk about. I don't know, you know, what to include. I've got all these ideas in my head. But so it's always good to backpedal a little bit and get those foundations clear first. Because getting clear on those things can help with any type of communication in your business, telling stories online in your content, being in a podcast interview, or putting an about me page on your website, or writing a blog, or doing a video, whatever it might be. That foundational work can help you with all of the stories and messages you deliver, not just in a talk.
Yeah, such a great point. And you're right, you know, imagine like all of that content then that you can then put into these different areas of your business. So on that note, you mentioned podcasting.
Yeah.
You've given me all these little keyways in today, Helen. I'm loving this. Podcast, tell me, what are you up to with regard to podcast?
So it was about the beginning of last year. I was really looking at where my business was headed. And because I still do this work in the corporate world, and I do this speaker coaching in the consumer world, I really wanted to find a way of drawing both of those things together. And when I was thinking of ways that I wanted to connect and reach people, I was reminded of something my dad had said to me before he died. And that was that I had a voice for radio, because I was hosting the Brighton Business Show at the time. And I really wanted to take that forward, but I wanted to pull these two worlds together and help people with their communication. Because I know that the words we use, and if we're consciously using our words powerfully, can have a massive impact on all areas of our lives, from being honest in relationships and having adult conversations, to dealing with conflict at work, to influencing a group of people, to telling a story, to standing on a stage. There's so many different ways that if we're conscious about the words we're using, we can actually really benefit ourselves and other people. So I came up with the concept of words that change lives. And it is all really around my story of how that has impacted me, not speaking up in relationships, not using the right words, to really harnessing my story and sharing that and helping others to do it, and helping people overcoming conflict situations myself, rewriting old patterns around the words I use. And I wanted to put that together in a podcast. And so, took on board a fab team called Winter Audio. They're amazing. And we worked together from the start to plan it all out. And really figure out, like, what do I want this to focus on? And I really wanted kind of every episode to solve a problem of some kind, and broach a topic around communication that could help people and give some sort of value and stuff like that. So that's what I did.
I love it. I
Launched,
love it.
launched it in January.
Perfect.
And I'm now planning out phase 2. So I've, the first 14 episodes have all been recorded and everything. And now I'm thinking, okay, so what's next? Where do I take it next? What types of people do I want to speak to? What types of things do I want to talk about next? And yeah, I'm really excited because, as I say, people in the corporate world can listen to it and get stuff from it, but also people that are like us, business owners, coaches and consultants, if you want to be more conscious about how you can use your words to make everything better, really.
Yeah, I love it. And I think, isn't it interesting how we see podcasting? Because I think it feels like you're so much more structured in how you've put together this podcast, which is brilliant. I think I just decided I'd just like to have lots of conversations.
But that's great too.
Yeah.
That's also great.
Exactly. And I think it's like, I suppose the message is to anyone listening who's thinking, well, I love to do a podcast, but I don't know how, or I don't know what I do or why I do it. I think it's about doing it for the reasons you want to do it. I think that's really important. And there are people out there who monetize their podcasts. It's part of their revenue streams. There are people probably more like me who says, actually, it's a bit of visibility. I love having conversations. I choose my guests, I think, on the basis of the people I probably already know, because I guess I already trust we would have a great conversation.
Yes.
So it's very simplistic the way I do my podcast. And I suppose my question, Helen, to you is, when you are planning out these guests, is there actually a formula and structure behind it? What's your thought process with your guests?
Well, the first thing, I think you've made a really good point, is to understand what the end goal is, which can then influence everything else. So for you, as you say, it's a bit of visibility, maybe some authority. For other people, is actually monetizing the podcast. My stepsister's partner is doing phenomenally well with his podcast called Pulp Kitchen. And that it started as something that they were just doing, and now they've got sponsorship and they've got all sorts of things. It's absolutely incredible. But that's a very different model to me, which is, I want to definitely raise visibility, grow a different type of community, and also generate leads.
Yes.
So that then informs, it's almost like begin with the end in mind, right?
Yeah.
That then informs, well, who am I bringing on, and what are we talking about? And I must say that's changed a little bit since I started this a year ago now, in terms of planning it and everything, because I've become a bit of a fangirl for Modern Wisdom. Do you know Modern Wisdom, Chris Williamson?
Tell us more.
Okay, so Modern Wisdom is a podcast by a man called Chris Williamson. Now, I love evolutionary psychology, and so does he. So that's why I love it, because he's always asking the question, why do we do the things we do? And that then informs all his guests and the questions he asks. It's very intelligent conversation, but it's also really interesting. And I want to be like that. I want to have those types of conversations which are honest and intelligent and go deeper and help to explore and solve a problem around communication in its broadest term. So the next person that I'm recording with he's my favorite author of a business book called How to Disagree.
That sounds interesting.
Yeah, so his is all about how we really need to encourage productive disagreement in organizations, because we're not very good at it. We don't deal with it very well in organizations because of cultural norms, and because of not wanting to put our head above the parapet, and because of hierarchy and all that sort of stuff. And he explores how you can do that and I help people with that in organizations myself. So sort of the coming together of two minds around that topic really is interesting, and hopefully useful for other people as well.
Oh gosh,
And then there's like ones I do on my own. So there's solo episodes I do on my own as well.
Yeah.
And then there's head-to-heads where I go up against someone to debate a topic as
Oh, I
well.
like that. I like that
Mm,
idea a lot. I
mm,
think it's such an interesting point about how to disagree. That's really hit a nerve with me, I think, where when I was in corporate, I really did experience positions I had where I probably said the wrong things
mhm.
in terms of I disagreed with the boss. Okay, so I don't mean I said the wrong thing. I mean I said the wrong thing, if that makes sense.
Right.
So
Yeah.
it got me into trouble. Sometimes it exited me from businesses. And
Right.
I think this is the big issue, isn't it? When we have these conversations about why we feel we can't disagree. I can't wait to hear a podcast that deals with that subject, because I think that would be super interesting.
Well, you bring something up really valid there, right? So I have got an episode out. It's called Direct Words for Direct Wins, which kind of touches on this. So definitely have a listen to that. That's out already. But essentially, it comes at it from a viewpoint that there's, generally speaking, two types of people within a disagreement dynamic. One type of person will speak up, right, to defend themselves and to say it how it is in a sort of, sometimes can be a defensive way, or for other people it could be an attacking way. And then there's another group of people that in that type of situation will not speak up and will avoid or be passive or won't voice what they need to be voiced. Now, there's different situations where different things are going to be more suitable, but just as an example there, you said you were exited from organizations because you spoke up, because you
Yes.
did defend yourself in that situation.
Yes.
So in both those, which are not ideal on the negative, right, it's about understanding, well, what can we do differently here?
Yeah.
How can we be productive in our disagreements, so where we're both heard or we're all heard, and we can do that as neutrally as possible and get to the result that we want?
Yeah. And that is such a great question. How can we do that? And I think it can be unpicked beautifully in a conversation. And I suspect that's going to be super interesting to listen to,
Yeah.
as I mentioned. I love these deeper conversations. I'm always trying to peel back layers of humans because I'm fascinated by them, as you know, Helen. And I'm all for wanting to know and understand why someone's world is different to mine ultimately. That to me is just super interesting. I love that so
It is.
much. So
Yeah.
I suspect that this podcast that you are making and have already made episodes for, Helen, is going to be brilliant, and it will need saving into people's libraries on whatever
Yay.
platform they're listening to. So tell us the name again of your
Mm.
podcast.
It's called Words That Change Lives, and it's available wherever you listen to your podcast. So whether it's on Spotify or Apple, wherever, it's there. You just need
Brilliant.
to search for it, and you can follow or subscribe, and then it will be in your phone
I
queue.
love it. I love it. And we will make sure we put all the links in, obviously, underneath the detail of this podcast that we're doing today. I also want to ask you about something super fab, which I love about you so much. And that, I think, I don't know, but it feels like it's connected to this whole radio thing, and you presenting a radio show. And then I know you've always had a love of music. We've always talked about music. We both do. Helen, what else do you do that the listeners may not know about?
Well, it's a hobby, really, but I absolutely love mixing drum and bass and garage and house music.
Fantastic. I love it. And obviously, if you follow Helen, and please do if you don't already, you'll see from time to time she will put out her DJ posts. She has an Instagram as well about her
Yeah.
DJ journey, which
Yeah.
again, we'll put the links in. Tell us more about that. How does this even happen, these kind of hobbies, Helen?
So that started, I used to play the piano as a young child, and when I moved to Brighton, which was rave central in 2001 when I moved here, and I moved here for the clubbing scene, I just decided to buy myself a set of 12, 10 Technics turntables and teach myself how to mix. And that was that. And I did teach myself, and it was vinyl, so I learned on vinyl. And I played out at a few places, but always was held back by my confidence and mucking it up, because mixing vinyl is not, it's not that easy actually. And so I used to muck up all the time, and then that knocked my confidence, and then I stopped because I got married, I had kids, I put my focus into other things, but it was always a joy, and it was always something that gave me a lot of joy. So in lockdown, and my ex-boyfriend, who I was with at the time when I started DJing, he was like, you should get back into it. Just get back into it. Why not? It's digital now. It's much easier. And I was like, oh my God, really? So I bought a little digital deck, taught myself again, started slowly sharing it online as I was going, because it is very different learning on a digital setup than a vinyl setup. And I started sharing little snippets, and then people started watching that. And then I had people saying, could you play at my house party? And could you play here? And I said yes, yes, yes to all of it. And then because I was more confident with digital, I felt more confident doing it. And then I started collaborating with Disco Yoga. Sarah Hunt runs Disco Yoga. So I was the DJ and she was leading the yoga sessions. And
Love it.
that was incredible. And I've done a few gigs out and about at different events. I've got one coming up in a few months, but mostly I do it for the joy of taking it round my friend's New Year's Eve party and smashing out some tunes for a few hours, you know.
I love it.
I have been to a studio recently and learned on Pioneer, so I'm a tractor DJ, but I learned on the big, massive Pioneer 3000s, which was very, very different to what I'm used to. That was a bit nerve-wracking, but it was really good experience. So I don't take it too seriously. I've had many opportunities where people have said you need to really pursue it, but it's not the main gig. It's just a hobby that gives me so much joy. If I'm feeling sad, I'll just get the tunes on, have a mix. I'm always listening to new music, downloading new music. I love playing new music like drum and bass, garage mainly. And it just gives me joy.
Yeah, and isn't that the thing, eh? Isn't that what we need to sort of seek out in life? It's the things that give us joy. I actually discovered Bicep because of you. Just saying, because they're amazing. And then my partner now, he will send me lots of tunes, and then I think he sent me a Bicep tune, which I didn't know. And so drum and bass, I love, you know, I'm the old grey girl who likes a bit of drum and bass. I should be far too old for it, really, but I'm
No,
not.
absolutely not. Absolutely not. Bicep are actually playing in Brighton in July, on the beach.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah.
That will really be something. They're super good, I think. I love them. So I've loved watching that journey. You said something really poignant, I think, which potentially will bring the podcast that we're doing today to a really nice close, because you talked about things that give us joy. Apart from the fact that obviously a big part of your journey has been courage, and I've seen that from you. You've talked about it, and just finding your voice, which links to your beautiful podcast. I think this whole joy thing is so important. I think we must never not talk about it. You did an amazing post this morning, Helen, which I read, and I'm not going to cry, but when I read it, it did totally hit. Listen to me. This is real podcasting, guys, because the emotions there. The post was amazing because it really did hit a point to me about life and living in the now. And the list of things that you wrote in the post, just about the things that you really appreciate, you know, and they're just these everyday things. And I'm trying to think about, there was one about walnut cake.
Yes.
You talked about walnut cake with lots of walnuts kind of thing, you know, and
chunky ones all the way through.
Chunky ones all the way through. And these really simple things. Can you remember a couple more on that list? Because I did have a look.
So
Tell me.
one was blending to D&B or garage tunes together. One was walking up the hill in the South Downs, seagull cries, chatting with my friends, the laughter from my kids, bread with Lurpak butter.
That's the one, because I love
Ice cream,
Lurpak.
watching slime videos,
Yeah.
memes.
Honestly, Helen, it was such a great post, and it just, I guess it made a real point, and I want to sort of talk about that just to finish and say to everyone listening, you know, whatever the content we put out, whatever we talk about, what we should always remember is about living in the now, and actually just one thing from every day. I know it sounds a bit twee, but one thing from every day, you know, that you just remember you enjoyed so much. And today it's going to be this podcast.
It is.
Because it's been amazing chatting to you, hon.
And you too. Thank you.
Have you got a final thought for our listeners based on, you know, how far we've come in 6 years, you and I?
Gosh. I guess, and it's going to sound twee, but keep going.
Yeah.
You know, in those 6 years, so much has happened for both of us.
Yeah.
And yes, there's been times where I've wanted to just, you know, hide in a hole and not want to be visible or present, but there's some kind of one step forward every day in one way or another. Keep going.
Yeah.
Just keep going.
Keep going. Keep evolving and keep going. Thank you, my lovely, lovely Helen. Listeners, I hope you enjoyed that. I always enjoy chatting to Helen, and that's a personal thing. But I think when you think about what we've talked about today, it's these key things again. It's about evolving. It's about having courage to step up and do what we want to do. It's about experiencing joy in what we do. You know, it's not always about chasing the money. Sometimes it's even more important to love what you do, you know.
100%.
So thank you again, Helen. It's always amazing chatting to you. Guys, if you've enjoyed the Human Conversation as much as we have, you can listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. We also record it for YouTube, so you can see our beautiful faces over there.
Oh, no, you didn't tell me that.
But you look beautiful, so all is well. Listen, please keep tuning in, like, comment, and make sure you save it in your library so you can listen to Live It, Love It, Sell It, The Human Conversation. We'll see you again soon. Ta-ta for now.
You've just been listening to the Human Conversation podcast with Jules White. To find out more about the other work that Jules does, please visit her website, www.liveitloveitsellit.co.uk. And if you enjoyed the podcast, then please do leave a rating and review on the platform you use to enjoy her show. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.